Alicia, thanks so much. So this is what we know about the suspect. 45-year-old Mohamed Sabry. An FBI affidavit says Soliman confessed to the attack after being taken into custody yesterday, told police he was driven by a desire to, quote, kill all the Zionist people, a reference to the movement, of course, to establish and protect a Jewish state in Israel. This is going to be a key feature of our coverage this very hour, though we do want to bring into the conversation right now Republican Congressman from Colorado, Representative Gabe Evans. He represents Colorado's 8th Congressional District. He joins me. Congressman Evans, thanks so much for being with us here. I have to ask you first, though, what more are you learning about the incident and about the suspect tonight?
Yeah, well, of course, first and foremost, our hearts go out to all of those injured. It's an absolute tragedy, but this is what frustrates me. As we continue to investigate this and as more information comes out, my gut feeling, having spent 22 years in the military and law enforcement, is that we will find there were either clues or warnings or indicators that could have led to intervention that would have prevented this from even happening in the first place. The problem is Colorado is unfortunately a sanctuary state. Just less than a month ago, in fact, our governor signed into law yet another piece of legislation that handcuffs state and local law enforcement when it comes to working with federal authorities. State and local law enforcement in Colorado will now be fined $50,000 if they share information with Immigration and Customs. And since this individual that committed this heinous crime overstayed a visa, is in the country illegally, that means that this is a situation where sharing information is potentially off limits. And so when it comes to being able to prevent something like this from happening, if state and local law enforcement can't work with their federal counterparts to put together that big picture to intervene before something like that happens, this is something where sanctuary states are clearly implicated. And unfortunately, among other things, it's why Colorado is the second most dangerous state in the country right now.
So, Congressman, I have to ask, being a former member of law enforcement yourself, do you have questions as to why this guy wasn't on the radar of any law enforcement in the Colorado, state, in the Boulder area here? He was planning this attack for more than a year.
Again, Colorado has defunded law enforcement. They're cutting mental health resources to cops in some of our biggest cities. Law enforcement is understaffed, and again, they cannot work with their federal counterparts whenever there's potentially an immigration nexus. And again, this individual illegally present in the country, overstayed 2 different visas. This is a barrier that prevents law enforcement at all levels from being able to work together when things we just learned this afternoon. This individual reportedly was using Molotov cocktails because he was denied an application to buy a firearm in the background check because it came up that he was illegally present in the country. And so when you can't have state, local, and federal authorities working together to be able to put together that comprehensive picture, unfortunately, you have situations like this where folks slip through the cracks and commit heinous crimes.
So to that point, I do want to highlight that new reporting here from the Associated Press. And they say this, that Mohamed Sabry told a detective he used Molotov cocktails in the attack because he had not been able to buy a gun. That's according to the affidavit. He said he learned to shoot a gun in a concealed carry class, but had to change his plan for the attack after he was blocked from purchasing a gun because of his immigration status. If you were from the Boulder area, or if you're just watching this interview right now, Congressman, I have to ask, how do you overstay a visa and get to live in Colorado on an expired work permit and commit something like this? His visa expired, I believe, in March of this year here. And so he's been here basically carte blanche illegally for more than 3 months. How does that happen? Where are the failures in the system to allow that to happen?
Yeah, so he actually overstayed 2 visas. He overstayed a B1, B2 visa, which is like a tourist or business visa, and then the previous administration granted him a work permit, which he then also overstayed. So actually he overstayed twice, and it was those last couple of words in that screenshot that you just showed, which says he's an illegal immigrant, his immigration status. In Colorado, there are 4 different state laws that prohibit any state or local law enforcement, or really any state or local political employee, political subdivision of the state. So counties, cities, state government employees, they are prohibited from sharing any information with federal authorities as soon as immigration becomes a factor. And so those last few words is why I think a large part of why this slipped through the cracks, because Colorado is a sanctuary state that has defunded their police and that has put barriers in place to prevent the sharing of information, which you go back to the 9/11 Commission, that was the takeaway. One of the big takeaways from the 9/11 Commission is we need to share information at all levels to be able to identify and put together the puzzles to stop terrorist attacks like this from happening.
But how do you prevent it? I mean, how do you stop it? This guy, Soliman, 45 years old, he's an Egyptian national. Once you overstay your visa, you kind of go off the grid. You're dark. I mean, how will you, unless you commit something heinous like this, be brought to the attention of law enforcement?
Well, the first one there is that attempted firearm purchase. You go and you try to buy a gun. The ATF form is called a 4473. You have to do a background check, and that flags that this individual is illegally present in the United States. If Colorado was not a sanctuary state,
Okay.
I have to wonder, would we have been able to, would that have been a red flag that pops up that says, why do you have an illegal Egyptian national trying to buy a firearm in the United States at a time of heightened anti-Semitism and where we have known jihadist threats around the world and present in the United States? Those were all things that should have popped up on the radar. But again, in Colorado, as soon as immigration status is invoked, state and local law enforcement has to be hands off.
Okay, it's just you're alluding to the fact that this is so reactionary here. I want to put up this tweet, though, from Secretary of State Marco Rubio. He says this: in light of yesterday's horrific attack, all terrorists, their family members, and terrorist sympathizers here on a visa should know that under the Trump administration, we will find you, revoke your visa, and deport you. Do you have confidence in the State Department, DHS, members of the Trump administration to go about this the right way? Are they doing this correctly?
I think we've seen that here in Colorado, where in addition to this violent attack, we've been grappling with violent criminal gangs like the Sinaloa cartel, the Jalisco cartel, Tren de Aragua, MS-13. And in the first few months of the new administration, we've seen a dramatic crackdown where at times with triple-digit numbers, known Tren de Aragua gang members and their associates are being rounded up by joint operations with DEA, with ICE, with multiple other partners. The problem is, again, in Colorado, you also have folks like the mayor of Denver, who has said that if ICE tries to come into their city, his exact quote was, this is going to be a Tiananmen Square moment where he and 50,000 Denverites line up to prevent ICE from being able to do any sort of enforcement in the city of Denver. And so there really is a push-pull right now between the federal authorities that are going after these gangs, these violent criminals, these terrorists. 13,000 known murderers in the United States who are illegally present. The feds are going after them. States like Colorado, like California, other sanctuary states, they need to get with the program, because if they don't, we're going to continue to see violent incidents like this occur.
So what's Congress's role here, if any? I mean, I'm sure you've spoken to some of your colleagues about this. Do you have a role here?
Yeah, so the first bill that I introduced in Congress is actually called the Uplift Act, unhandcuffing police to locate and interdict foreign transgressors. Does a lot of things, but particular to this situation, if a state or local law enforcement officer in a sanctuary jurisdiction like Colorado, which fines them $50,000 if they cooperate with ICE, if a state or local agency or police officer decides, you know what, in the sake of public interest, I need to work with my federal counterparts to potentially prevent something like this from happening, that state or local law enforcement agency or officer is extended federal hold harmless protections for simply working with their federal counterparts. And in a situation like this in Colorado, that enables the information to flow, which might have prevented this from happening.
And just lastly, Congressman, this has been one of a string of several anti-Semitic attacks and incidents just this year in the United States in cities all across the country: Harrisburg, PA, Washington, D.C., now Boulder, Colorado here. What's your message to American Jews tonight?
I have two things to say on this one. First and foremost, we stand by the Jewish people. If you commit a crime against a Jewish individual or the Jewish community as a result of hate or bias, we will find you. We will prosecute you to the fullest extent of the law. You will be held to account for any crimes against the Jewish people or any form of anti-Semitism. First and foremost, from my heart as a cop, as a soldier for 22 years, that goes out. The second thing is we need our Democrat colleagues to join us in condemning anti-Semitism. And not just when it happens, we need to condemn anti-Semitism before the violence occurs. When we're having anti-Semitic protests on college campuses, when we're having anti-Semitic protests around public events. Last year in the Colorado State House, the state capitol, where at the time I was serving as a state representative, the Democrat Speaker of the State House refused to allow hostage families from Israel into the Colorado State House because she was afraid she wouldn't be able to keep order because she had so many pro-Hamas sympathizers in elected positions in her party. We have to condemn the anti-Semitism before it becomes violent, and we need our Democrat colleagues to join us in doing that.
Yeah, one of the victims in this attack yesterday, an 88-year-old Holocaust survivor. I want to put up this tweet you posted on your account today. You said this attack was preventable, or you retweeted this, excuse me. You said this attack was preventable, but Democrats and Biden closed their eyes and created a national security nightmare. The Biden border crisis continues to devastate our communities. It doesn't have to be this way. And House Republicans passed a solution, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. Before I let you go, this is pending right now in the Senate. Is the Senate get it over the finish line? Are you confident or not?
Yeah, we're going to absolutely get this done. There's actually been 5 times now where pundits said we're not going to get this done. Every single time we've delivered for this. This is something that has to pass, not just to protect the safety of the United States and our communities, but Americans are facing the largest tax increase in history. And so from a national security perspective, from a public safety perspective, from a cost of living perspective, we're going to get this thing done. We're going to deliver it to the president. It's going to be signed into law in order to keep our communities safe and affordable.
All right, Congressman Gabe Evans there with Republicans of Colorado. Sir, we thank you for your time, and we'll talk soon. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
All right, in the meantime here, I do want to put up this post by President Trump on Truth Social today, reacting to the terror attack in Boulder just yesterday, saying this. Take a look at this. Yesterday's horrific attack in Boulder, Colorado will not be tolerated in the United States of America. My heart goes out to the victims of this terrible tragedy and the great people of Boulder, Colorado. In the meantime, though, in case you might have missed it live, we do want to let you watch, it's very brief, the moments. This is a virtual court appearance of the suspect today there as he was making his first court appearance. Let's watch.